The church bell rings once. The sound trembles in the air, fading into an endless silence that seems to swallow everything. You awaken there, in that silence, as if time itself has paused to take a breath. The air is cold and damp, heavy with the scent of rain and wood smoke that will never rise again. You stand in the center of a small English village, the year is 1350, and everything is still. The cottages that once leaned close together like neighbors whispering secrets now sit hollow, their doors ajar, their windows blind. A thread of mist curls through the empty lanes, soft and colorless, blurring the edges of what remains. You take a step forward. The ground beneath you is soft, overgrown with grass that has grown wild in the weeks without footsteps. The well in the square still gleams faintly with water, though no one draws from it. A wooden cart lies overturned beside the road, its wheels half sunk into the earth, as if the village itself has grown tired of waiting. In the distance, a single crow calls once, a sound sharp enough to break the quiet, then vanishes. The echo seems to travel for miles before dissolving into mist. You walk slowly, feeling the air press close, listening for the faintest sign of life. There are no voices, no dogs, no laughter from the tavern door. Only the wind moving through broken shutters, carrying a faint smell of straw and dust. Each step feels like trespass into a memory. It is not terror you feel, nor despair, but something gentler, the ache of what has gone, and the strange peace that follows loss too great for tears. Somewhere nearby, a wooden door creaks open, not by hand but by time. You look, expecting someone to emerge, a farmer, a child, anyone. But the doorway stays empty. The house breathes once, sighing through its cracked roof, and stills again. The world holds its breath with you. You realize, standing there, that the noise of life, the chatter, the bells, the trade, the prayers, had been so constant once that you never heard the silence behind it. Now, for the first time, you do. The sun struggles through the fog, weak and uncertain, laying pale gold across the thatched roofs. The light touches the wells, the doors, the fences, the fields, blessing what remains. You listen to your own heartbeat, slow and steady, and it sounds impossibly loud in this new quiet world. You walk on, guided by nothing but the faint rhythm of your breath, and the voice of the wind that whispers through the ash trees. This is what the end of a world sounds like. It is not fire. It is not fury. It is stillness, a stillness that waits to be filled again. You step into one of the cottages. The door gives way with a soft groan, and the smell that meets you is faintly sweet, old hay, wood ash, something left behind. Dust floats in the air like fine snow, glimmering where the light filters through a broken shutter. Inside, the world has stopped mid-breath. A wooden bowl rests on a table, the spoon beside it still marked with a trace of dried broth. A small shoe lies near the hearth, its laces undone, as if a child had meant to put it on again tomorrow. The bread on the shelf has hardened into stone, its crust pale beneath a thin layer of ash. Nothing here frightens you. There is no sound, no presence, only the soft hum of memory, still lingering in the shape of things. You sit for a moment on the edge of the bed, its straw mattress flattened by time. The blanket is rough wool, half-folded, as if someone had risen just before dawn and promised to return. You imagine their hands, chapped, strong, gentle, reaching for that same fabric. You can almost see the flicker of a candle on the wall, the small movements of a life so ordinary it once seemed eternal. Now, only the marks of it remain, the smudge of soot on the stones, the faint groove where a chair was dragged again and again across the floor. The silence here is not cruel. It is tender, like the pause between heartbeats. It invites you to listen, not for voices, but for presence itself. You notice the way the wind sighs softly through the gaps in the wall, and how the floor creaks as if speaking in its own language. You touch the table, feeling its smoothness where countless hands once leaned, the warmth that would remembers long after flesh is gone. Every object becomes a story, small, incomplete, but honest. For a moment, you close your eyes. You can hear the faint murmur of what once was, laughter near the hearth, the soft rhythm of a mother's song, the thump of a ladle in a pot. The cottage feels full, but not with ghosts, with love that has refused to leave. You realize then that absence does not erase what mattered. It only quiets it. The world has not been emptied, only hushed. You rise slowly and look around one last time. The morning light has grown stronger, warming the corners of the room. Dust drifts upward, catching the sun like stars. It feels almost sacred, this stillness, as though the air itself is praying for what once lived here. You step outside again into the soft gray of the village and breathe in deeply. The silence no longer feels hollow. It feels holy, the kind of quiet the earth keeps when it mourns, and when it remembers. The road stretches before you like a ribbon of pale earth, curling between hedges that have grown wild in the months without tending. Mist hangs low, softening the shapes of trees and the faint outlines of cottages that once marked the edge of the village. The air tastes of damp soil and wood smoke. Somewhere, far ahead, someone must still be burning firewood, and that small sign of life feels almost miraculous. You begin to walk. The ground is soft beneath your boots, slick with last night's rain, and each step sinks slightly, leaving prints that no one will follow. The world is wide and strangely open now. What once bustled with carts and horses and chatter now feels endless, silent, and vast. From time to time, the wind carries sounds that aren't there, the creak of a wheel, the echo of a bell, the distant bark of a dog. They fade before you can be sure they were real. The fog plays tricks, turning branches into reaching hands and the broken posts of fences into silhouettes of travelers who never move. Yet you keep walking, drawn onward by something older than reason, the need to move, to find, to know that there is still something ahead. Hours pass, though time feels uncertain. At a bend in the road, you see shapes through the mist, 3 figures walking the same path, wrapped in worn cloaks, their faces hidden. As you draw closer, one lifts a hand, not in warning but in greeting. You pause a few paces away, the distance between you filled with caution and curiosity. The oldest of them, his beard gray and tangled, speaks first. His voice is soft, cracked by weather and grief. "We keep walking east," he says, almost whispering. "There's work, they say. Fields to tend. Land left empty." The woman beside him nods, clutching a small bundle to her chest. Her eyes are tired but kind. The youngest, a boy of perhaps 10, carries a stick and looks at you with quiet wonder, as if unsure whether you are real or a shadow from the mist. You walk together for a while. No one speaks much. The rhythm of footsteps becomes a sort of prayer, soft, steady, patient. When you do part ways, it is with a nod, not a farewell. In this new world, there are no goodbyes left to give, only the hope that paths may cross again. You watch them fade into the gray until they are swallowed by the fog, then turn forward once more. Ahead, the road widens and rises gently. From its crest, you can see the faintest traces of smoke on the horizon, not from fire or ruin, but from hearths newly lit. Somewhere beyond those hills, life continues. The thought stirs something deep inside you, a fragile pulse of warmth against the cold. The world may have emptied, but it is not dead. It waits, quiet and bruised, for those still willing to walk. And so, with the sound of your own footsteps steady beneath the gray sky, you keep moving east. The fog thins as you walk east, and soon the land begins to open, broad, rolling fields stretching toward the horizon. The old estate walls still stand, moss-covered and cracked, but their gates hang loose, untended. Once, these fields belonged to men whose names were spoken with fear and obedience. Now, they belong to no one at all. The manor on the hill is silent, its windows stare blankly over the land it no longer commands. The banners are gone, the horses too. Only the earth remains, steady, waiting, forgiving. You step through a broken fence and onto soil that feels soft beneath your feet. It has been months, perhaps longer, since anyone turned it. Yet it breathes, alive beneath its crust of weeds and frost. A few figures move slowly through the mist, farmers, thin but upright, their hands calloused but sure. One pushes a plow drawn by a weary ox, another scatters seed by hand, the grains catching the wind like sparks of gold. Their clothes are patched, their faces pale, but their movements carry a quiet strength. You watch them for a moment before joining in, taking hold of a handle or lifting a basket. No one asks whose land this is. No one gives orders. No one came to stop us, you murmur, almost to yourself. The words sound strange, like a secret spoken aloud for the first time. The others glance up, and a few nod. There is no triumph in their faces, only a calm acceptance, the kind that grows from necessity, not rebellion. The rhythm of work settles into you quickly, the scrape of metal through soil, the soft thud of boots, the sigh of wind through reeds by the nearby river. Each sound blends with the next, becoming almost musical. Ho, breath, wind. Ho, breath, wind. The pattern repeats like a lullaby for a waking world. From somewhere beyond the fields, you hear the faint caw of crows, not ominous, just alive. A hammer strikes against wood in the distance, slow and steady, where someone repairs a wheel or a roof beam. The river murmurs nearby, carrying reflections of clouds that drift unhurriedly across the pale sky. It feels as though the earth itself has taken a deep breath, releasing the tension of years. As you work, the scent of freshly turned soil rises, rich, damp, grounding. You feel it cling to your hands, your skin, your clothes, as if the land is claiming you in return. The muscles in your arms ache, but it is a good ache, the kind that reminds you that your body still answers when called. The others speak little, yet there is an understanding among you, that life will not be restored by kings or priests, but by hands such as these. By the time the sun begins to sink, the first lines of tilled earth stretch across the hillside, dark and neat against the wild green. It is not much, but it is something, a beginning. You wipe your brow, look around, and for the first time in what feels like forever, you allow yourself a small smile. The land listens. It does not care for titles, nor for the men who once claimed it. It only asks to be tended. And tonight, it will sleep under the touch of the living once more. Morning comes softer now. The mist that once clung to the fields has lifted, and the first rays of sunlight stretch across thatched rooftops like gentle fingers waking a sleeping world. Smoke curls from chimneys again, thin at first, then thicker, a sign that fire, that ancient heartbeat of home, has returned. The air carries a new scent today, not ash or decay, but something tender and ordinary, the smell of bread. You follow it through the narrow lanes of the village. Windows once shuttered are open again, letting in the morning light. A woman kneels near a hearth, her hands white with flour, shaping dough with quiet reverence. Her sleeves are rolled to her elbows, her arms dusted like marble, and beside her sits a small boy watching the rise of each loaf as though witnessing a miracle. She smiles at him, a faint, tired smile, but real, and for a heartbeat the room feels whole again. The sound of laughter floats faintly from the street outside. It startles you at first, unfamiliar after so many months of silence, yet it warms the air like sunlight on winter stone. A man walks past carrying a basket of apples, his cart creaking behind him. Another calls out, offering cloth in exchange for eggs. These are not merchants of wealth, but of survival, neighbors trading what little they have, rebuilding a rhythm that once seemed lost forever. Coins have grown scarce, words and goodwill have taken their place. You stand by the open window of a cottage and breathe deeply. The scent of baking bread fills your lungs, warm, earthy, forgiving. It mingles with the faint perfume of crushed herbs from the garden outside, with the smell of hay and damp soil. It is a smell that belongs to the living. You close your eyes, and for a moment, all the sorrow, all the silence that came before, begins to soften around the edges. It feels as though the earth itself is forgiving you, inviting you to stay. In the smell of fresh bread, you think, life forgave us. Beyond the cottages, the marketplace stirs. Tables, long empty, are set up once more beneath the old elm tree. A few chickens wander between them, their feathers catching the light. Children chase them, laughing, their feet splashing in puddles that reflect the gold of morning. Someone tunes a fiddle, and though the tune wavers at first, it carries, bright and human, through the square. The rhythm of life has changed, slower now, humbler, but it is life nonetheless. The people move differently, as though aware that every gesture, every word, is a fragile gift. A woman hands her neighbor a loaf still warm from her oven, wrapped in cloth, and their hands linger for a moment in shared gratitude. Across the square, an old man begins to hammer nails into a broken door, the sound steady, reassuring. The world is patching itself together, not with grand design, but with quiet care. As the day deepens, sunlight pours through window panes, catching the dust in golden beams. The air hums with small sounds, the crackle of firewood, the squeal of a wheel, the chatter of sparrows on the roof. It is not the bustling noise of the old world, but something gentler, a conversation between the living and what has endured. You sit outside as evening approaches, a piece of bread in your hands. Its crust crackles softly as you tear it, releasing a warmth that feels almost sacred. You eat slowly, watching the last of the sunlight fade from the thatched roofs, and you realize that this, not the silence of loss, but the quiet of renewal, is what survival truly sounds like. The world, against all odds, has learned to breathe again. The harvests came easier that year. The fields were wide and rich, and there were too few hands to gather what the land offered. For the first time in memory, the peasants spoke of wages, not as whispers, but as promises. The blacksmith demanded 2 pennies more for his work, the thatcher, a loaf of bread for each day. And to everyone's surprise, there was no one left with the power to refuse. The Lord's halls stood empty, their heirs gone to plague or war, and so the people began to taste something they had never known before, the quiet sweetness of freedom. Yet freedom, like all new things, drew the attention of those who feared it. As the fields filled with workers who spoke as equals, the whispers of resentment began to drift from the manor ruins. "They grow too bold," said one steward to another. "They forget who they are." Soon, riders came from distant towns carrying rolls of parchment sealed with wax, the ink still wet from the king's hand. The statute of laborers, they called it, a decree that no man or woman should take higher wages than before the pestilence. The parchment was nailed to trees, to the doors of churches, to the sides of barns where all could see. People gathered beneath them, reading the words aloud in low, uncertain voices. Some frowned, some spat, but most stood quiet. The wind rustled the parchment, making the letters tremble as though the law itself were unsure of its own strength. "They want to bind us again," someone murmured. Another shook his head. "They can't bind the wind." Evening settled over the fields like a sigh. Workers sat together after the day's labor, their tools laid beside them, the smell of fresh-turned soil clinging to their clothes. They spoke softly of what the law meant, of fear, of justice, of whether the world that had broken could truly be rebuilt by those who once ruled it. You listen, feeling the slow churn of thought turning to understanding. The air between them grows heavier, but not with anger. It is reflection, the dawning realization that obedience, once automatic, now has a weight that can be set down. A young plowman stirs the fire with a stick. The sparks rise, orange against the darkening sky. "We buried the dead," he says quietly, almost as if speaking to himself. "Now we've learned to bury obedience." The others fall silent for a long moment. A few nod. The fire crackles softly, filling the space where words might have been. The next morning, the parchment still hangs on the tree by the crossroads, but now it flutters in tatters. Someone has drawn a line through the king's name, another has pressed a muddy handprint across the seal. The crows perch above it, watching the road as men and women walk past without stopping. The law is there, but its power has already begun to fade, its ink dissolving beneath the rain. You walk with the others toward the fields, and though no one speaks of rebellion, there is a quiet certainty in every step. The world has changed. The plague had taken so much, bodies, homes, faith, but in its wake, it left something neither lord nor priest had intended, the knowledge that life, once unchained, will not so easily bow again. The air that morning felt different, light but full, as if something long held back was finally ready to be spoken. The village green, once a place of quiet barter and gossip, now drew people from every lane and field. They came with tools still in hand, sleeves rolled up, earth on their boots. The sun was high, clouds drifting lazily across the sky, and yet there was an undercurrent in the air, the kind that gathers before change, soft but unstoppable. At the edge of the green stood a man, plain in dress but bright in presence. His hair was the color of straw, his face lined with sun and work. He was no lord, no priest, no man of title, yet when he raised his hand, the murmuring stopped. Even the birds seemed to quiet in the hedges. His voice, when it came, was calm and steady, not the cry of revolt, but the tone of reason made sacred by truth. When Adam delved and Eve span, he began, his eyes sweeping the crowd, who was then the gentleman. The words fell like gentle rain, soft, clear, but impossible to ignore. For a moment no one spoke, and then the meaning began to settle, not in their ears but in their hearts. A woman near the front nodded, folding her arms. A boy on the fence repeated the words under his breath, testing them like a new prayer. A farmer laughed once, not in mockery but in disbelief, as though hearing something he had always known but never dared to say. The preacher's voice carried across the square, past the market stalls and the churchyard, through the windows of cottages where old men listened in silence. God made no man master over another, he said. He made the same soil beneath every foot, the same breath in every chest. The lords would have you bow again, but tell me, what crown does the plough recognize? What title commands the wind? A ripple moved through the crowd, not a shout, not a cheer, but the stirring of thought becoming faith. People looked at one another, seeing not neighbors or tenants, but equals. Some reached out, resting a hand on another's shoulder. The moment felt fragile, luminous, a flame cupped between 1,000 hands. A banner flapped in the wind, plain cloth, no emblem, but it caught the sunlight and shimmered like gold. In the distance, the church bell began to toll, not for morning this time, but as if joining the voice that rose below it. Its sound rolled through the valley, slow and deep, echoing the rhythm of a heartbeat. The man on the green lowered his hand. "We ask not for war," he said softly, "only for the right to stand upright in the light." His eyes met yours for a moment, calm and certain. You feel something rise in your chest, not anger, not pride, but belonging. Around you, the crowd begins to murmur again, but now their voices weave together like threads of the same song. As the wind moves through the banners and the bell fades into the distance, the people begin to disperse, back to their cottages, their fields, their quiet work. But something has changed. The world feels a little wider, the sky a little nearer. The words linger long after the voice is gone, echoing in your mind as you walk home, when Adam delved and Eve span, who was then the gentleman. It is not rebellion that stirs in you, but awakening, the simple, sacred knowledge that truth, once spoken, cannot be silenced again. The road to London winds like a ribbon of dust beneath the June sky. It is long, uneven, and yet it feels lighter than the burden you've carried until now. You walk among thousands, men and women, young and old, their clothes patched but their eyes alive. The sound of footsteps rises around you, steady and rhythmic, like the pulse of a single, enormous heart. Dust swirls at your ankles, mingling with the scent of sweat, bread, and earth. Somewhere ahead, a drum beats slowly, not as a call to battle, but as a heartbeat, patient, human, enduring. You don't remember when you began walking, only that one morning you found yourself among them. The air hums with quiet conversation. Some speak of wages, others of justice, but most walk in silence, letting the rhythm of the road carry their thoughts. It is not anger that drives them, not vengeance. It is something gentler and stronger, the need to be seen, to be heard, to be counted among the living. The wind moves across the open fields, carrying the faint notes of a song, low and ancient, rising and falling like the tide. As the day deepens, the road grows crowded. Villagers step from their cottages to watch as the line of people stretches beyond sight. Some offer jugs of water, some bread, others simply nod, as if recognizing themselves in the faces that pass. Children run alongside for a time, waving and laughing before being called back by their mothers. No soldiers follow. No lords appear. The kingdom itself seems to be holding its breath. By evening, the sun sinks low, painting the horizon in amber and rose. Fires bloom along the roadside, small circles of warmth against the gathering dark. You sit among strangers who no longer feel like strangers, sharing crusts of bread, murmuring stories of lost seasons and better days. The flames flicker in their eyes, turning tired faces into something timeless, almost holy. Across the fields, the light of other fires mirrors yours, stretching like constellations upon the earth. Someone begins to hum again, a melody simple and slow. Others join in, voices blending until it becomes less a song than a hum of belonging. The tune ripples through the night air, carried by the wind, crossing rivers and hedgerows. You look toward the stream beside the camp and see torches reflected in its surface, trembling lines of gold on black water. The reflection sways gently, like the memory of light rather than light itself. When the fire burns low, you lie back on the ground, watching the stars emerge one by one. They seem close tonight, almost within reach. Around you, the murmurs fade into the deep breathing of sleep. In the stillness, you whisper to yourself, "We marched not for vengeance, but for worth." The words linger in the air, half prayer, half promise. Morning will come soon enough. The road will stretch on, and London will rise ahead, its towers gray in the dawn. But for now, beneath the stars and the soft flicker of dying fires, the world feels vast and possible. You close your eyes, the sound of footsteps still echoing faintly in your mind, and in that rhythm, steady, patient, eternal, you hear the truth of it, not conquest, not rebellion, but awakening. Humanity, at last, remembering its own worth. London rises out of the morning mist like a dream, its towers grey, its river wide and slow beneath a sky the color of pewter. You have walked for days to reach it, and yet when you finally stand upon the hill that overlooks the city, it feels unreal, distant, as though it belongs to another world. The bells begin to toll, their sound rolling through the air, echoing off the water. You and the others pause to listen. It is not a warning, not quite a welcome, more like the heartbeat of something immense and ancient, waiting to see what you will do. By midday, the crowd has gathered at Smithfield, a wide field of trampled grass at the city's edge. Rain begins to fall, soft, steady, almost apologetic. It darkens the earth beneath your feet and fills the air with the scent of wet cobblestones, damp cloth, and smoke. Around you, thousands stand shoulder to shoulder, their faces lifted toward the pale sky. They are farmers, blacksmiths, masons, widows, and sons, not soldiers. They carry no banners of conquest, only hope. From the far side of the square, the king's procession approaches, armor glinting faintly, horses stamping and snorting in the rain. The young king looks smaller than you imagined, a boy draped in the weight of power. His cloak drips with water, his eyes flicker between curiosity and fear. Yet when he raises his hand, the murmurs of the crowd quiet, as if the air itself obeys him. Your leader, a man of plain clothes and clear eyes, steps forward through the mud. His voice is calm, carried by conviction rather than anger. "We do not seek your crown," he says. "We seek the freedom to live by our own hands. To serve, but not to bow." The words hang in the rain, heavy and fragile. The king nods slowly, his lips pressed into a thin line. "You shall have it," he replies. "All shall be well." A ripple of relief moves through the crowd. People exhale, shoulders lowering, hearts softening. Some even smile. You can almost believe it, that after years of hunger and silence, the world might finally listen. The rain lightens. The horses shift. The moment holds its breath. Then, somewhere in that stillness, comes a whisper, a word passed from one man to another, quick as the flick of a blade. You do not see who moves first. You only hear the sudden rush of air, the sound of hooves striking earth, the sharp intake of 1,000 breaths drawn in at once. When you look up, your leader is falling. His body folds softly into the mud, his hand reaching once toward the sky, then still. No cry, no warning, only a stunned silence that seems to stretch across the city and beyond. For a heartbeat, even the rain stops. The king's horse stamps nervously, its breath rising in pale clouds. Someone calls out his name, not the king's, but the man now lying at his feet, and the sound cracks through the air like breaking glass. The soldiers move forward, slow and deliberate, their armor clinking like chains. The crowd does not fight. There is nothing left to fight with, and too much left to lose. You stand there, soaked and motionless, watching the rain wash the blood into the earth. When the king speaks again, his voice is soft, almost kind. "Go home," he says. "You are pardoned." And the people obey, not out of fear, but out of something heavier, the realization that the old world, wounded though it was, still knows how to endure. The dream dissolves, not with fire or fury, but with the quiet inevitability of rain falling on stone. As you turn to leave, the streets of London glisten around you. The air smells of iron and sorrow. Somewhere, a church bell begins to toll again, slow, distant, unfeeling. You walk away with the others, your footsteps merging into the sound of the rain. The field behind you grows silent once more. And as the last echo fades, you understand, ideals may rise like the sun, but the old world has deep roots, and it never yields without taking something of beauty with it. Winter comes quietly, as if the world itself wishes to forget what has passed. The roads that once rang with footsteps are empty now, dusted with snow that erases every trace of the march. The fields lie pale and still, the furrows filled with ice. Plows stand half buried, their handles jutting out like bones from the frozen earth. The sky hangs low and colorless, pressing down on the land until sound itself seems muted. You walk home through this silence, your breath rising in small clouds before vanishing into the cold. The rebellion is over. The voices that once filled the air with promise have gone still. Some fled, others never returned. The fire that had burned in so many hearts has dimmed to embers, each person carrying their own quiet grief beneath layers of wool and frost. No one speaks of London anymore. The dream feels distant, almost imagined, a warmth remembered rather than lost. The people have gone back to their fields, their hearths, their prayers, as though to hide beneath the weight of routine. Yet something subtle has changed. They move slower now, not from defeat, but from thought. You pass through villages wrapped in white. Smoke curls from a few chimneys, thin and gray against the snow-heavy sky. The smell of peat and pine lingers faintly, the scent of survival, of fire still burning somewhere deep within the cold. At the edge of one cottage, a child shapes a ball of snow, her laughter a brief echo of the world before sorrow. For a moment, the sound feels like sunlight, fragile and fleeting, but real. At night, the wind sweeps across the plains, whispering against the frozen riverbanks. The water beneath the ice moves sluggishly, unseen but unbroken. You sit by your hearth, the fire's light flickering across the walls, and think of those you marched beside, faces blurred now by time and distance. Their words return to you in fragments, soft as falling snow. "We marched not for vengeance, but for worth." You say the line aloud, and your voice sounds different now, older, steadier, quieter. Outside, the snow thickens, muffling the world. The trees bend beneath its weight, the roofs sigh. You look out across the white fields and think, we had reached for the sky, and found only frost. Yet even as the thought settles, another follows, the quiet knowing that frost is not forever. Beneath the snow, the seeds wait. Hidden, patient, alive. You rise and place another log on the fire. The flames flare briefly, casting a warm glow that dances against the windowpane. The light spills across your hands, reminding you that though the world has gone cold, life still stirs in its depths. Outside, the wind continues its long, low song, and you listen, not with sadness, but with acceptance. The season will pass. The snow will melt. And somewhere in that stillness, beneath the hush of winter, something new is already beginning to grow. The years pass like slow-moving clouds, each one softening the sharpness of memory. The land that once lay broken and bare has healed. The scars of plague and rebellion have faded beneath the patient work of generations. The village stands again, not grand, but whole. Its streets are swept clean, its cottages freshly thatched, the smell of wood smoke rising each morning like a quiet hymn to continuity. Children run where once only echoes lived. Their laughter fills the same spaces that once held silence, and the sound feels like sunlight reborn. You walk the familiar paths with slower steps now. The fields ripple gold beneath the wind, wheat bending like water under a calm blue sky. You pause at the edge of the land that once belonged to the Lord's estate. It is open ground now, shared and tended by many hands. The fences are low, the gates unbarred. There is a peace in the air that was once unthinkable, not the peace of power, but of understanding. Inside the homes, things have changed too. Books sit beside bread, and learning has found its way into places it was once denied. A child reads aloud by the fire, her voice halting but determined, while her grandmother listens, smiling faintly at words she cannot yet follow. The light from the hearth flickers across their faces, warm and steady. It is a small scene, but it carries the weight of all that came before. You stop before the old church, its stones now covered in moss and ivy. The bell tower leans slightly, yet the bell still rings, though softer than it once did. It tolls not for morning, but for the marking of hours, a rhythm of living rather than loss. Each sound is a reminder that time has continued its long forgiveness. Standing there, you remember the cold years, the frost, the fear, the endless waiting. And yet, what stands before you now feels like the world's quiet apology. The fields that were once filled with despair now hum with bees and the rustle of ripened grain. The market square is alive again, bakers calling, hammers striking, voices rising in the easy melody of work. You sit by the edge of the well where you once stood in silence all those years ago. Its stones are worn smooth, but the water remains clear. You see your reflection trembling on its surface, older, yes, but gentler too. The faces you lost return in fragments, a smile here, a voice there, woven into the generations that followed. You think to yourself, the world did not end, it merely changed its mind. The phrase comes with a kind of wonder, a realization that the end of one age was simply the turning of the page to another. Life had folded in on itself, only to open again, quietly, patiently, with hands calloused but kind. The wind moves across the fields, bending the wheat in long, graceful waves. The sky above is vast and pale gold, the kind of color that promises more than it takes. You take a slow breath, feeling the warmth of the sun on your face, and you smile. There is no fear left in you now, only gratitude. For the breath you draw, for the soil beneath your feet, for the memory of all who walked before. The past has settled into peace, and the harvest of memory glows as richly as the fields themselves. You lie in bed now, centuries away, yet the same wind that once carried the bells of that small English village still moves softly through your window. The night is quiet, the world outside still breathing, just as it did then, the same rhythm, the same patient turning of the earth beneath the stars. History, you realize, is not gone. It sleeps, just as you do now, resting between one heartbeat and the next. Close your eyes, and you can almost hear it, the slow toll of the bell, the rustle of wheat in the fields, the distant laughter of children running between cottages that no longer stand. The centuries between you and them dissolve like mist. What was grief has become memory, what was ruin has become foundation. The past is not buried. It has only settled into the soil, feeding everything that grows. You think of those who came before, the farmers and builders, the mothers and smiths, the nameless who stitched the torn fabric of the world back together with calloused hands and quiet faith. They did not rebuild for glory. They rebuilt because dawn always comes, because life, no matter how broken, leans toward the light. The wind that touches your face tonight is the same wind that once moved their hair as they looked toward the horizon and began again. Outside, a faint sound stirs, a church bell, far away, its tone softened by distance. It feels less like a sound and more like a memory calling through time. You imagine the bell swinging slowly, not in mourning, but in greeting, welcoming you, reminding you that you are part of this long, unbroken story. You breathe in deeply. The air is cool, clean, and gentle. The world has seen so much, endings, awakenings, countless winters and renewals, and yet it endures, and so do you. People still rebuild. Myths fade. Empires crumble. But the simple faith that tomorrow will come remains, steady as the stars above the darkened sky. And so, as the candles fade, we remember, not the plague that ended the world, but the hands that rebuilt it. The wind sighs once more through the open window, carrying the faint echo of bells across the distance of time. Their sound drifts farther and farther until it becomes part of the silence itself. The world sleeps again, and with it, you drift gently into that same timeless peace, the sleep of history, deep and kind, where all things find rest.